Now let's move along to our next guest, the legend, the one of the greatest, if not the greatest, UFC welterweight champions of all time. He is the UFC Hall of Famer, and he joins us right now on the MMA Hour, Matt Hughes. Thank you so much for joining us, Matt.
No big deal, buddy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show for the very first time. Let's talk about a lot of things going on in the world of Matt Hughes. But early last week, there was a story about you in a local Iowa paper, which essentially implied, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that you have closed the door on your MMA career. Is this true?
I wouldn't say I've closed the door, but I've got my hand on the door handle. It's been over a year since I fought, and I'm having a good time with my family, raising my kids, which I think is, a bigger thing than me competing. Making sure my family's raised right. So I'm having a good time at home with the family, and kind of maybe lost the desire just a little bit to compete. So I'm not retired yet, but it is looking like that's where I'm going.
Now, I remember talking to you a few months back, earlier this year, and you said that you wanted to have a discussion with Dana about your future, and Dana has come out over the summer. He said he wanted you to retire. Did you ever have that talk with the president?
Not so much. Now, we have talked, and he's voiced his opinion about me. He just says I've got nothing to prove, and, for Dana to say that, it means something, because I think he's taken my best interest at heart. I still think he could make some money off me, put me on a card, but he's looking past the financial side of things and saying, hey, you've been here for a long time and you're good to go and you can retire. And with him talking like a father and not a businessman, it really lets it sink in a little deeper than it would the other way. So he said that. My wife, of course, has said, hey, you need to retire. You've got nothing else to prove. So with those two saying that, it's kind of leaned on me a little bit. And the fact that, shoot, brother, I just had another birthday. I'm 39 years old.
Wow.
I don't stretch the way I used to. I don't recover the way I used to. I'm not as quick as I used to be. Probably not as strong as I used to be. So it's funny, for the last 10 years, I kept getting older, and my opponents kept staying the same age.
Well, happy birthday, first and foremost. I'm wondering, Dana has said this about a few other legends. He came out about Chuck Liddell. He said it about Vanderlei, although that didn't really happen, that he wants guys to retire and he doesn't want to make money off of you, even if, as you mentioned, he could. At first, when you heard him say this, considering your relationship with Dana, did it bother you that he went out publicly and said that he wanted you to retire when it seemed, at least from what you were saying in the media and to the public, that you weren't quite ready to hang it up?
Yes. A year ago, I was 100% go. I wanted to compete, was wanting to know kind of who the next opponent he was thinking of, and from now it's turned within a year, it's turned into, maybe he's right. I am a year older and don't move the way I used to, so I was not very happy a year ago, but after a year I can see what he was saying and now I see why he was saying what he did.
In combat sports, we've seen this from guys like Muhammad Ali to before Muhammad Ali to even today. Guys stick around too long. Do you have to at least tip your cap to Dana as the promoter, the guy who won't be affected by you sticking around too long? If anything, he'll just make more money off of you, saying, you know what, I don't want this. I don't want any part of this. And he says it repeatedly. I mean, for all the things that you can say about Dana, you do have to give him props on that one, that he actually cuts short or maybe tells guys when it's time to stop, when he could probably make, money off a guy like Chuck Liddell, like yourself, way past when they retired.
Sure. He is not a Don King at all. So Dana's a fair person. He's a fair businessman. So, with that being said, he's obviously made some great decisions for the UFC, but personally, he's, I've asked his opinion on a few things, and he always gave me a straight answer that I knew was coming from his heart, not his business side of things, and he's always treated me great.
So what do you do now? What's a typical day like for Matt Hughes?
Well, my brother still runs the family farm, so this morning I got up, got the kids ready for school, Took my 13-year-old boy to school. Then I went and lifted at 8 o'clock. Lifted from 8 to 9. Got done with that. Picked up my daughter, and went and helped my brother on the farm. He had 2 loads of beans out in the field, along with a hopper in the combine, and we got that in while it was raining, so they got a little wet. And
Wow.
Now I'm talking to you on the phone. I got an old Western on TV, and I'm watching it rain outside.
Wow, this seems like quite the life.
It is usually a lot more hectic than this, but with this big rain we've had come in this morning, there's not a whole lot to do outside. I'm outside all day long. Most of the times I don't hit the inside unless I got to drink or eat, go to the bathroom. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I want to do is go outside and get some work done. The last thing I want to do at night is come inside and take a shower and go to bed. So I'm not an indoors person. It drives my wife crazy because she is, and she'd like me to be indoors a little bit more.
Now, does it take some getting used to for a guy who, you had the rush of training camp, and then it's fight week, and then there's crowd weigh-ins, and then it's fight night? Does it take some getting used to not having that adrenaline in your system? It feels like fighters' lives are blocked off with training camps and fights and things like that, and now you don't have that anymore.
Yes, I don't have the adrenaline rush, the adrenaline dump I would have at times, when I was younger. But it's been a slow transition. As you have more kids, the more you have to pay attention to them and slow down with your business and really, really concentrate on your family. So it's been a slow transition. The oldest kid's 13, and my youngest daughter is 2.5. So I've got 4 kids through there, and so it's been a transition, and I'm pretty happy with I'm happy with the decisions I've made and the way my life has turned out. I'm not a terribly intelligent person, but I was smart enough to know that I needed to get the right people in to help me. I married a very smart wife. She's been great with financially and making decisions around here. Of course, I've had Monty around for years, and Pat Miletich, and they've always had a good business sense on them. Monty's great with business, and Pat was always good with fighting. So they helped me a lot through my fighting career, and it's with the team that I put around me, I've had some good decisions being made. Not saying that I made them, or not saying that I came up with the decisions.
Will you be involved in MMA in any capacity, whether it's training guys? We hear the word union come up a lot lately as far as retired fighters, sort of helping back, helping the sport and the younger guys, things like that. Does any of that stuff interest you, doing anything in the sport of MMA now that you may not fight again?
Yeah, I'm helping a company right now trying to get MMA into the Olympics, which is going to be a heck of a process. So I'm helping them do that. I've also told the UFC that I'd like to help out. I think the weakest point of mixed martial arts today is judging. I'd like to help out with getting some qualified judges in there so that when somebody's want to fight, they're going to get their hand raised. The biggest frustration is watching a fight go somebody's way for 4 out of the 5 rounds, and then it goes to the guy that I thought would have lost. And I know that a lot of people share that same frustration. So I would like to help out with getting some type of a committee that makes sure these judges or these refs are qualified.
Those are 2 great causes as far as MMA is concerned. I want to ask you about both of them. As far as the Olympics, what exactly are you doing to try to get this into the Olympics, the mixed martial arts?
With a company right now, we're getting an amateur organization going on through the United States here, and we've also talked to several other countries. We're international. We're just taking the steps to get it there. We're a nonprofit organization, and that's what it takes. We've got all our paperwork done to apply into it. Now we're setting some teams together between the U.S. and Sweden or Brazil or whatever country it is. And we're just getting the whole process started. Arrow, afterwards, I can talk to you and send you as much information as you want if you're interested in doing anything on that.
Very interested. And as far as judging is concerned, would you ever consider being a judge yourself?
Definitely.
Really?
I definitely would.
Wow.
When I'm a judge, I can only help the fighters that are right in front of me. I would rather take have a piece of a school or help these judges figure out the best way to judge. And of course I wouldn't be the lead person. I wouldn't want any financial interest in it whatsoever. But by gosh, these judges need to have some knowledge. They can't go from a boxing atmosphere and think that boxing is going to be the same way. You just can't. So
Yeah.
I don't know what type of school somebody needs to set up, but I would love to do anything I could to, and I don't even know how to get it done. I've just voiced my opinion in the UFC of if you come up with something to help out with the judges, I want to be a part of it. Back in my older days, when I was living up in Iowa and training every day, we're talking 8 years ago, I was judging every weekend or reffing every weekend. So I've judged a lot of matches and I've reffed a lot of matches. And so I think I could help out in that, figuring out what the best criteria is. My number one criteria when it comes to judging a mixed martial art fight is damage. Whoever does the most damage probably ought to win the round. If you're on bottom, if you're on top, if you're on your feet, whoever does the cumulative most damage in a round is probably going to win. And some of these judges think that because one guy was on top the whole 5 minutes, and just because he was on top, they think he should have won the round. And the bottom guy could have been throwing great elbows, creating a huge amount of damage, but they just don't see that.
Do you think the 10-9 system works? Because I don't.
That's a big question right there for me. I'm sure you've got a time limit right now on how long I get to speak. It needs critiqued. I'm not going to say it doesn't work, but some things need to be changed with it.
Okay, fair enough. How about all the injuries? Have you noticed that there's a ton of injuries in MMA? Do you think this is part of the evolution of the sport, or do you think guys aren't doing it correctly? What's your take on that? I'd love to hear it.
I haven't figured out why there's more injuries now than when we were going. But 8 years ago, and boy, that's a big number. We were training every day and we were training hard, but we just didn't get the injuries, and I don't know why. In the day, Miletich had a bunch of great guys: Jeremy Horn, Jens Pulver, Robbie Lawler, me, Pat Miletich, a bunch of guys that you wouldn't even know their name, and we were busting each other's heads every day, but we just weren't getting the injuries they do nowadays. And I haven't figured out why that is.
Do you think that there's too much at stake? Maybe the guys are afraid that they're going to get released, so even if they have a small injury, they're going to pull back, things like that. Do you think that has anything to do with it?
I would have to say that the people are making the decisions a little different than we used to. I don't ever remember coming into a fight 100%. My bumps and bruises, after a fight was over, my bumps and bruises came from training. If I trained properly, typically the fight went pretty easy. I always thought the guys in my practice room were tougher than my opponents, but we had a great room, and so I do think some of these guys are getting a little softer to where, hey, if they're not 100%, they're just going to call off the fight. And there's been several fights, and I think Chuck Liddell would say the same thing. Several fights where you're not 100%. You're just not 100%. And these guys today have to be 100% or they're not going to compete.
What about the hit squad? What's the state of that team?
Sold. I sold that about a year ago.
Okay.
Are you married?
I am.
Okay. How long have you been married?
4 years, actually.
4 years. Good. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, a year ago, I was fighting a battle with my wife. I would drive down to the gym, drive an hour, work out for 2 to 3 hours, drive an hour back. And it was one of those to where I was slowing down. I was doing most of my training in Salt Lake City with Jeremy Horn anyway. So it was one of those battles to where I just got rid of it and won a battle at home. And it made my wife happy, and it was something I was able to release. So there you go. Ariel, does that explain the situation with the hit squad?
It definitely does. So does that mean that you're no longer going to be the head of a team and train younger guys, things like that? It's just not on the cards for you?
Yeah, correct. Hit squad is not Hughes intensive training anymore. It is just HIT, as in HIT. So my name's off the gym. There's still the hit squad, but it's not Hughes intensive training anymore.
Okay, and another hot topic in MMA that I wanted to get your take on, testosterone replacement therapy. What's your take on this? Is it fair? Is it playing by the rules, or is it cheating?
I don't know much about it.
Okay.
I really don't. I do know a little bit, and I I think everybody ought to step in there the way they are. Steroids, testosterone. I just think everybody ought to go in natural. I really do. So this testosterone or anything, GHB, whatever else they've got, these guys have got, growth, whatever it is, they ought to just lay off of it. I think everybody just needs to be who they are and step in there.
Fair.
I know I could get a lot of heat for some other fighters, but I've never taken anything. Protein, maybe creatine monohydrate when I was younger, but I've never taken anything that wasn't at GNC store ready to go into a shaker and drank into your body.
Right.
So that's my opinion.
That is very refreshing to hear. Now, I'm wondering, you say you have your hand on the door, so to speak. Is there one fight when you go to bed at night, when you put your head on your pillow, is there one guy I would love, just one more fight against this guy to prove myself against him, to shut him up, to do whatever? Is there one guy that's sort of, that cloud above your head right now in your life?
No.
No one.
Nobody.
Now, a lot of people want me to ask you about Dan Hardy because it seems like he has a major beef with you. He is not a fan of your, I guess, your lifestyle, your hunting, things like that. What's the issue here with Dan Hardy? Have you figured this out?
Well, I haven't figured it out. The only thing I know is that somebody said something to Dan about me hunting. Mm-hmm. Dan's original reply was, "Hey, the guy's got his own life. Let him do his own thing. I don't care. If he wants to hunt, that's fine, but I'm not a hunter." And then all of a sudden it turned, I think Dan, he found an angle, and now he is an anti-hunter. And I don't know Dan. I don't think I've ever talked to Dan. Maybe I've seen him live, maybe I haven't, but I don't know the guy. But from what I've read about him, and I'm talking about what he's put on my Twitter, he's just a kid. Maybe he's trying to find an angle, trying to fight somebody, but personally, I don't think I've done anything to him. He's just a kid.
And I was looking at your Twitter. It seems like, at least based on what they're saying to you, members of his family are also writing to you on Twitter, right?
His dad. And, it's funny. I've got a lot of messages back on Dan and his dad, none of which I'm going to repeat on air. But, so I think Dan kind of called his dad to the situation, and his dad's, looking out for his kid. That's the best I can figure out for it. But, people are who they are, and I don't plan on meeting Dan. I don't plan on ever seeing his dad. So they can talk all they want, from across the ocean. They can do whatever they can say whatever they want to say. They're not going to get under my skin.
What do you say to people who criticize you and who say that what you're doing as far as hunting, you have pictures up that we're showing on your website or your trip to Africa with your son? What do you say to people who say that this is immoral?
They can think whatever they want. But as far as by the law, I'm right. You can't see anything in the Bible. By the law and by the Bible, I've not done anything wrong. And if I haven't conflicted with either one of those, I can live my life the way I want it. That's my answer.
What was that like? You had this trip that you took with your son in Africa over in it was back in July. What was that like? Some of the animals that you're with, those things are massive. What was that experience like?
It was great. My boy liked it a lot more than I did. I got about halfway through the trip. We were gone for 2 weeks. Halfway through the trip, I was homesick. Joey, my 13-year-old boy, he didn't want to leave. When we got done with the safari, he did not want to leave, and I couldn't get on the plane fast enough just to come home to the rest of the family. So he had a great experience. I shot 6 animals: kudu, gemsbuck, eland, red hartebeest, black wildebeest, blue wildebeest. He shot a kudu, gemsbuck, zebra, impala, and bushbuck. So we had a great time. It was a great bonding moment. He's 13 years old, so of course he's never going to forget this, and he can't wait to go back to Africa some other time.
And do you ever eat these animals, or is it just for recreation?
When you go to Africa, I had to pay to shoot these animals, but when you kill an animal, you get the hide and the horns. All the meat stays with the outfitter, and it feeds the people there. So I wasn't entitled to any of the meat. Now, of course, in camp, we ate meat from animals that had been killed, 2 weeks before that or something. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I didn't get to bring any of the meat home because it wasn't mine to bring home.
Okay, understood. Now, a couple more questions, and we'll let you go. And I've loved having you on the show. Thank you so much for the time. Next month, as I said, you are one of the most decorated, if not the most decorated, UFC welterweight champion of all time. Next month, big unification bout at 170, George St. Pierre versus Carlos Condit. Who are you picking and why?
Well, George and I don't know Carlos at all, but George and I get along fine. He's a good guy. We've got each other's cell number in case we ever needed anything. We've chatted a little bit through text. Great guy. If George is mentally ready for this fight, I think he was laid off close to 18 months, maybe. Mm-hmm. If he's ready mentally and his timing's good, George walks away with his belt. Now, if his timing's not right, if he hasn't prepared properly since that layoff being so long. And mentally, if he's not there, he could have problems. But I really don't see a game plan. 100% George St. Pierre, I don't see a game plan they can come up with Conduit to beat George.
And will you sit back and watch this pay-per-view? Are you a fan of UFC now that you're not competing actively?
I'm a fan of certain people and matchups.
Okay.
And this is definitely a matchup where I'll find it, I'll watch it, and I'll see how it goes. My one criticism with George is I wish the guy would finish more people because I know that he has the ability to. He's the best. He's the best guy I've ever fought, and I just wish he'd go out there and do that to everybody else the way he made me feel in his 2 wins. So I mean, I'm not being mean. I'm just being very honest.
Sure.
The guy's got so much talent. My gosh, go out there and use it all.
Why do you think he doesn't try to go for the finish?
I think he's just very careful. He doesn't want to lose, which of course nobody does. But then the more effort you put into finishing the fight, the more you open yourself up to be finished. Matt Serra's a great example. He was going out there striking with him, he got caught with a punch. So I mean, I think he's just a very careful person.
Okay, and the following month, your good friend BJ Penn is fighting Rory McDonald. Will you be training with BJ for this fight?
BJ's one of the worst guys about texting you back. He sent me a text, happy birthday, a week ago. I sent him right back that day. I sent him a text back, hey, thanks, buddy. No fun being 39 years old. And, hey, what are we doing for the next fight? And he's not text back to me. So I need to get back to him. Of course, if BJ wants some help, I'm there. If he doesn't get back to me, I won't be there to help him.
What do you think of it? Do you have any thoughts on Rory McDonald? A lot of people think he could be a future champion.
He's good, very good. So, I mean, BJ, I give it to BJ because BJ will fight anybody. He just will. I've never heard of him not wanting to fight somebody. He comes up with some interesting matchups. This is one of them. If I was BJ's coach and he had 5 people on a list to fight, this is one of the names that I would probably cross off and say, hey, we don't need to fight him. Let's worry about somebody else. It's a little bit better matchup for you. But this is who BJ wants to fight, so this is who he's going to fight.
Final question for you, Matt. Right now, as far as the MMA and UFC history books go, who is the greatest UFC welterweight champion of all time?
Boy, Randy's had 2 different weight class belts.
But I said welterweight champion. Welterweight champion.
You'd have to say it'd be me or George, and that I guess to differentiate that, it would be opinion.
Okay, but in your opinion, who is the best?
Well, George beat me twice.
All right, fair enough. So great to have you on the show, Matt. Really, really appreciate it. It sounds like you're keeping the door slightly open, but right now, if you were to say we shouldn't bet on seeing you on a UFC card anytime soon, right? Not even for Matt Serra.
As funny as it may sound, I've never been able to have a matchup that I wanted. I've never went to the UFC and said, hey, I want to fight him. So whoever I would happen to fight wouldn't be my decision, number one. And number two, it doesn't look like Dana is looking for me to fight anyway, so it doesn't matter who I would want to fight because I don't know that I'm going to be in there. But I would say don't bet on me either way because I just don't know what's going to happen.
Fair enough. Thank you so much for the time, Matt. Enjoy the time off. Enjoy the farm, the family, all that good stuff. And I'm sure we'll be speaking to you sometime in the near future.
Sounds good, buddy. You have a good day, and talk to you later.
All right, there he is, the legend, Matt Hughes, the 9-time, as they say, UFC welterweight champion. So gave us some of the greatest moments in the history of the octagon, those two fights. I remember that fight against George St. Pierre, UFC 65. I was merely a fan at that point, and I remember going to a sports bar in Montreal, Quebec, Canada to watch George St. Pierre defeat Matt Hughes. In that place, first off, there was a huge line outside the sports bar. It was called Champ Sports Bar in Montreal. And once we finally got in and watched UFC 65, which I believe also had Tim Sylvia versus Jeff Munson on the card, which eventually led to the return of Randy Couture at UFC 68, defeating Tim Sylvia. But I will never forget the reaction inside Champ Sports Bar in Montreal when George St. Pierre defeated Matt Hughes to become the welterweight champion for the first time. The place erupted like the Canadians had just won the Stanley Cup. It was a great moment. Of course, he had that rivalry with George, beat him the first time, then lost the second time. And, of course, UFC 79, which was the fight that was supposed to be headlined by Matt Serra versus Matt Hughes. Matt Serra got injured, and then GSP stepped in and defeated him for the interim title, and then eventually beat Matt Serra at UFC 83 for the real deal belt. And that's what will be on the line next month in November 17th, UFC 154, George St. Pierre versus Carlos Condit.